For every extra 100 horsepower you get from performance mods, you cut your engine's life by 50%. Even mods with pitiful gains can be catastrophic. Here are 13 performance mods that secretly destroy your engine. Some attract huge fines, cause thousands in damages, and even send drivers to the ER. Stick around for the 5 best mods for big horsepower and torque that won't break the law or your engine. Let's start. Number 13, performance camshafts without supporting upgrades. When executed properly, performance camshafts can boost horsepower and torque by a staggering 30%. Think of what that can do for you on the track. However, when you're on the street, the results tank. Aggressive camshafts shift the power band higher, which reduces low-end torque. This makes cars less responsive at lower-end speeds, especially in stop-and-go traffic. But even then, your car will still burn more fuel because the increased valve, lift, and duration affect combustion. If the camshafts aren't tuned properly, you could end up with a lean or rich mixture. That means you'll experience rougher idles, detonation, overheating, and premature engine wear. Another major problem is the overlap between intake and exhaust valves. While this makes the engine sound throatier, it also sends unburned fuel into the exhaust. This process ruins catalytic converters, which can cost over $2,000 to fix. Then let's not forget the strain this puts on the valve train. Higher lift and faster ramp rates wear out springs, retainers, and lifters. That's another $4,000 in damages. But do you know the worst part? Performance camshafts only work with other upgrades. The same thing goes with the next model. Number 12, high-performance spark plugs. When you spend 2 to 4 times as much on spark plugs, you expect them to last at least twice as long. Sadly, that is rarely the case. Even though performance spark plugs are marketed as this magic bullet that will boost horsepower and fuel efficiency, they rarely do. The first thing you need to understand is that not all plugs work with all cars. For example, if you use a plug with the wrong heat range, it can cause pre-ignition and piston damage. On the other hand, a plug that's too cold will foul quickly and cause misfires. Another problem is improper gap setting. Tight gaps lead to weak sparks, which burn more fuel, while wide gaps cause misfires at higher RPMs. The reality is, if you have a stock engine, copper plugs will do the exact same thing as expensive iridium plugs. So for that higher price, you might be risking piston damage from a hot plug and unburnt fuel reaching your exhaust system. Always make sure the plugs match whatever modifications you're making to your car. But if ever in doubt, stick with OEM. Number 11, rev limiter removal. The rev limiter is a lifesaver. When your car reaches its speed limit, the ECU cuts fuel or ignition to prevent engine damage. While removing the rev limiter will get you more power, this is one of the most dangerous mods you can make on a stock engine. For starters, stock valve trains are not designed to handle excessive RPMs. When you rev too high, the valves won't close fast enough, which causes valve float. If the valve comes in contact with the pistons, it can cause severe engine damage. The damage could be as mild as bent valve stems to as severe as a cracked cylinder head. A repair of this magnitude could easily surpass $4,500. Another problem with excessive revving is fuel injector failure. When the fuel injectors reach their maximum duty cycle, you'll get a lean mixture. Running lean at high speeds can cause detonation, which can also damage engine components. Other risks include oil starvation, mechanical overstress of the valve train, and premature wear of the drivetrain. If you want to boost horsepower and torque without spending a fortune on repairs, wait until the end of this video. Number 10, EGR delete. Here is one of the dumbest and least helpful mods, yet many people keep falling for this trick. The exhaust gas recirculation system is a control device designed to minimize emissions. While deleting the EGR can lead to a cleaner intake and more power, it's a smokescreen. First, let's get into the legal aspect. Removing the EGR system increases nitrogen oxide emissions, which is bad for the environment. The Environmental Protection Agency can slap a fine of up to $5,000. That's a high price to pay for stupidity. But now, let's get into the science. Many EGR systems are integrated into your car's management system. So if you remove it, it can trigger a check engine light and cause the car to run in limp mode. Of course, with the right ECU tuning, you can get past this. However, an EGR delete can also lead to higher combustion temperatures. This then increases the risk of engine knocking. To prevent this, you need to upgrade your engine's cooling system. Before you know it, you've spent thousands of dollars for a 1% increase in power. Number 9. Water methanol injection without fail-safes. Water/methanol has been a popular upgrade in the high-performance world for decades because it works. It does a great job of preventing detonation, while also delivering a 10 to 15% increase in horsepower and torque. That's a lot more than you can get from most mods. However, massive gains require massive skill. Any slight mistake can lead to sudden catastrophic engine failure. The most common problem here is improper mixture. Most cars require a 50-50 mix of water and methanol. Too much methanol can cause a rich condition, carbon buildup, incomplete combustion, and even power loss. But if there is too much water, it can cause hydrolock, which can crack pistons and leave you with $3,000 in damages. The worst danger of all is if your car's ECU is tuned to over-rely on the WMI for detonation prevention. The moment the nozzle or pump fails, your entire engine will crumble under the temperature and pressure spike. If you can't afford the right mechanic and the right fail-safes, we've got an alternative later on. Number 8. Cheap aftermarket headers. Let's be honest, stock exhaust manifolds aren't efficient. Sure, they keep engines quiet and keep up with emissions targets, but that's it. That's why every car enthusiast should get aftermarket headers, even if you don't do any racing. They get exhaust gas out of the engine quicker, which can result in a 5% boost in torque. However, cheap headers cause more problems than they solve. The first problem is the build material. Cheap aftermarket headers use thinner stainless or mild steel. This means that they radiate more heat into the engine bay, which damages rubber hoses, plastic components, and even wires. They are also more prone to corrosion, so you'll actually spend more. The second problem with cheap headers is fitment issues. Because they don't fit like OEM or the good stuff, drivers are often left with clearance issues like scraping and cracking. The main concern with aftermarket headers is improper ECU tuning. Get this wrong, and the increased airflow will cause a lean condition, which increases detonation risk. In other words, there is no upside to cheap headers. Do it right, or don't do it at all. The same goes for the next piece. Number 7. Cheap or incorrect cold air intakes. Nearly $1.5 billion worth of cold air intakes are sold each year. That means millions of people buy them each year. But unfortunately, not everyone can afford $200 for a K and N. That's why there are so many cheap options, but these are more trouble than they're worth. For starters, many aftermarket intakes use oiled filters. When it is time to re-oil the filters, many people overdo it, and that can be catastrophic. The excess oil coats the mass airflow sensor, which leads to incorrect readings and poor engine performance. Another danger with cheap filters is the risk of particulate ingestion. Cheap air intakes let in larger dust and direct particles into the engine. These particles wear out piston rings, valves, the crankshaft, and other parts. But the greatest risk is an in-bay. an intake that only sucks in hot air. This hot air confuses the ECU, which thinks that less air is going into the chamber, so it cuts fuel supply. This leads to a lean condition, which can cause overheating, engine knocking, and even complete engine failure. We're going to talk more about cold air intakes later in the video, but first, let's see why bigger isn't always better. Number 6. Poorly executed turbo supercharger installs. Unlike cold air intakes, there is no debating the power of larger turbochargers. Bigger turbos inflow more air, which leads to more horsepower and torque. So much more, in fact, that it can overwhelm your engine. Larger turbos produce more heat, which causes thermal overload. This is when engine components operate at higher temperatures than intended. Combine this with excessive boost pressure, and you'll end up with melted pistons, engine knocking, and blown head gaskets. That is why you can never modify just the turbo. You have to fine-tune your entire system. To prevent engine knocking, you'll need to upgrade your fuel injectors and pumps. This will prevent lean air fuel mixtures that can wreak havoc on your engine and driving performance. That is why some cars lose power even after installing a larger turbo. By the way, larger turbos mean more turbo lag. So, in everyday driving situations, your car won't be as responsive. So, when you install a bigger turbo, ask the mechanic if you also need to strengthen your pistons, rods, and head gaskets. One blown head gasket will cost you at least $2,000, so don't cheap out on the upgrade. You will also need to upgrade the exhaust system and get a better intercooler. You'll also need to tweak the exhaust system to handle the extra heat. And don't forget to strengthen your pistons, rods, and head gaskets. If you skip just one of these, expect turbo lag, a dip in performance, and rapid engine wear. If you can't afford these additional costs, there are cheaper ways to boost horsepower and torque. Number 5. Exhaust systems with no back pressure. If you want to be heard before you're seen, a straight exhaust is the way to go. By removing mufflers and resonators, you get a raw, aggressive note that hits harder. What you don't know is that it will hit your account even harder. Even though back pressure slows down how quickly fumes leave the exhaust, it also creates a situation called scavenging. This means that as exhaust gases leave, they pull the next exhaust pulse out of the cylinder. So, by emptying the cylinder faster, your car will also go faster. So, when you have a naturally aspirated engine and you install a straight exhaust, there is no more scavenging. This means that at low to mid RPMs, your car will lose power. When Dyno ran this test on a stock 4-cylinder NA car, there was a minor boost in horsepower at 6,500 RPM. But between 2,000 and 3,500 RPM, torque was down by as much as 10 pounds. Another danger with straight pipes is valve damage. When scavenging weakens, hot air lingers around the exhaust valve longer. This excess heat can cause warping, valve burning, and seat recession. Oh, and if you took out the catalytic converter for the upgrade, you could be risking up to a $10,000 fine. A shop in Atlanta was fined $50,000. Stick around for the bonus section to find out how to upgrade your exhaust system the right way. Number 4. Nitrous oxide systems without proper safeguards or experience. Every fan of the Fast and Furious knows that nitrous oxide provides a massive, instant power boost. However, what most fans forget is the warning, amateurs don't use nitrous oxide. When nitrous floods the engine, it creates a huge spike in heat and pressure. Too much of it will crack pistons and even destroy the engine block. Even though a wet nitrous system is safer than a dry system, it still has its risks. So, unless you've got $8,000 budgeted for repairs, you need someone with experience to install the NOS. You also need adequate safeguards. Nitrous is injected into the engine as liquid, but over time, this turns to gas. If this gas enters the engine instead of liquid, it can overheat the engine. That is why the system needs to be purged and the jetting settings must be precise. If you get either of these wrong and you inject too much nitrous, you can kiss your engine goodbye. That, by the way, is if it doesn't lead to a grisly accident. Most importantly, don't ever use NOS in a car that hasn't been maintained properly. Just a shot of 50 horsepower in a poorly maintained car will cause irreparable damage. Before you make any enhancements, make sure you're doing these 17 car maintenance tips mechanics wish you knew. Number 3, ECU tuning. A good way to void your warranty is to remap your ECU. It is also a quick way to get more horsepower, improve throttle response, and lower fuel cuts. However, if you don't upgrade parts of your engine affected by the tuning, things will get bad fast. Most ECU tunes focus on fuel-air ratios. When a tune increases airflow by increasing the redline or boost pressure, the car can produce more power. However, if you don't get larger fuel injectors or increase fuel pump capacity, you will have a lean condition. Lean mixtures burn hotter, which can melt pistons, spark plug tips, and even exhaust valves. This can also cause detonation, which can wear your engine out quickly. On the contrary, tuning the fuel pressure without improving the air intake will cause a rich condition. The excess fuel will wash the oil film from the cylinder walls, which will dilute the oil and cause premature engine wear. Flash tunes have been proven to shorten an engine's lifespan by over 100,000 miles. This makes it one of the most expensive mod errors you can make, but it's still not as bad as the next one. Number 2, lightweight flywheels. Unless you use your car strictly for racing, lightweight flywheels make no sense. Stock flywheels are intentionally heavy in order to handle the heavy pulses from an engine's power strokes. Lighter flywheels store less rotational energy, so all of these vibrations are passed into the car. This can cause very rough idles and engine chatter at low RPMs. Then there is the lower inertia, which means lightweight flywheels require more effort to get them going. This makes them a nightmare in stop-and-go traffic. Lighter flywheels also can't handle gear changes as well as heavier ones, which causes harsh clutch engagement and drivetrain shock. This will ruin your drive shafts, CV joints, and other parts of the drivetrain. The repair bill on this alone can top $1,500. And let's not forget the added pressure on your transmission. Engines stall more frequently, generate more heat, and gear chips wear out quicker. That's another $4,000 down the drain. These mods are an accident waiting to happen. But don't worry, we've got a better solution at the end of this video. Number 1, oversized fuel injectors or fuel pump. Did you know that high-performance injectors can boost horsepower by up to 20%? However, if the injectors aren't installed properly, it can have the opposite effect. The first thing you need to do after installing high-performance injectors is to tune the ECU. Even the slightest mistake with this will ruin the stoichiometric air-fuel ratio. This will cause a rich mixture because there won't be enough air to match the extra fuel. This excess fuel won't burn, but will wash off the oil on the cylinder walls. Without this oil, there will be more friction in the cylinder, leading to ring damage and piston scoring. Unburnt fuel also seeps into the crankcase and mixes with oil. This reduces lubrication, increases the risk of sludge, and causes premature engine wear. But wait, it gets worse. When the extra fuel gets burnt in the exhaust system, it leads to catalytic converter damage. Add all of these together, and you'll be paying $3,000 for new pistons, $2,000 for the cat, and up to $8,000 to clean engine sludge. As bad as this sounds, there is a way to turn nearly every mod from an engine destroyer to an engine saver. So now, let's look at 5 mods for maximum horsepower and torque. Number 5, cylinder head, and intake upgrades. Every performance mod does one of two things. It either improves airflow or it demands more air. So, as you make other performance upgrades, you also need to upgrade the cylinder heads and intake system. If you don't, your engine will experience the failures we spoke about earlier. The first thing you need is a larger throttle body. This will allow more air to enter the intake manifold. But remember to choose the right size for your engine. You also need a premium cold air intake. This alone can add between 5 and 15 horsepower and a bump in torque. But when you combine it with aftermarket cylinder heads, ported and polished heads, and a larger throttle body, the gains will be much more. However, as you maximize the inflow of air, you also need to improve the outflow. That's why you need Number 4. Full exhaust system. The quicker your car gets rid of waste gases, the faster you can get clean air from your new cold air intake. Performance exhaust systems improve scavenging, sound great, and don't break any laws. When done right, of course. You'll need long tube headers, a high-flow catalytic converter, and a catback system. All of these work together to reduce back pressure and improve exhaust flow without eliminating emissions controls. Pay close attention to the build quality. Stainless steel parts tend to last longer, while titanium is lighter. Titanium is also more corrosion resistant and looks cool when heated, but it costs more. Number 3. Performance camshafts and valve train. The next step in your car's evolution should be the camshafts. By holding the valves open longer, performance camshafts are able to maximize airflow at higher RPMs. But remember the risks we mentioned earlier. That is why you also need to upgrade the valve train. Stronger, more responsive valve springs and retainers can help prevent valve float. When combined with an improved intake and exhaust system, you can get an extra 50 horsepower. Sadly, this doesn't solve the problem of rough idles at lower RPMs. Number 2. ECU tuning/dyno tune. Did you know that an ECU tune can boost horsepower and torque by as much as 20% in NA engines and 50% in forced induction engines? That's a lot of bang for your buck. But like we mentioned earlier, an ECU tune is very sensitive. One false move and your engine is cooked. Custom tunes need to be performed on a dynamometer, but as you optimize air-fuel ratio, advance ignition timing, and other variables for maximum torque, you must upgrade your engine. As effective as a dyno tune is, it isn't the mod that maximizes horsepower and torque. That honor goes to the next mod. Number 1. Forced induction, turbochargers and superchargers. There is a reason car manufacturers love turbochargers. This addition alone can increase horsepower and torque by as much as 50%. A well-tuned turbo can take a stock Honda Civic Type R from 316 horsepower to over 450 horsepower. If that doesn't get your blood pumping, nothing will. Forced induction works by pushing more oxygen into the compression chamber. Combine this with more fuel, and you get a bigger explosion and way more power. To set this up right, you must install the complete supercharger or turbo kit. You will also need supporting mods to handle the extra power, like larger fuel injectors and a high-flow fuel pump. For maximum power, get forged pistons and connecting rods too. Other things you might need to upgrade are your brakes, wheels, and suspension. Plus, don't forget a dyno tune when you're done. And who knows, you might end up with a 100% boost in horsepower and torque. So there you have a comprehensive breakdown of the mods that break or make your engine. If you're willing to bend the rules a little, you will enjoy 9 illegal car mods that actually work.